Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are breaking down a really passionate and honestly, a highly provocative argument from content creator Aaron Knightley. His fundamental premise here, he argues that traditional employment absolutely isn't a safety net. Instead, he sees it as a systemic trap that's literally designed to keep you dependent. So whether you're, deeply embedded in the corporate world right now, maybe you're an aspiring entrepreneur, or you're just kind of questioning the typical career trajectory everyone tells us to take, this explainer is going to visually map out his exact philosophy. We're going to examine his bold claims about society, work ethic, and what he believes is the true modern path to financial independence. Okay, let's dive into this with a quote that really drives his entire thesis. A man that does not own his time will never be free. Knightley argues that the corporate world desperately wants you to fixate on the dollar amount on your paycheck. But according to him, that is a huge distraction. The true currency of life isn't actually money, it's time. If you're locked into this unfair exchange where you're trading away time you can literally never get back just to earn a fixed salary, well, by his definition, you are giving away your freedom. To map all of this out, we're going to logically step through his philosophy in 5 parts: the 9-to-5 illusion, the corporate conditioning pipeline, the cost of survival mode, redefining hard work, and finally, the modern escape plan. Let's jump right into section 1, the 9-to-5 illusion. Knightley has this pretty jarring premise that people don't actually need a job. What they need is income. And the moment you conflate those two things, you risk becoming what he calls an NPC, a non-playable character. Borrowing from modern gaming terminology, he describes the average worker as someone who has completely lost their outside-the-box thinking. They're just blindly following the herd, essentially handing the controller of their life over to society. That brings us to section 2, the corporate conditioning pipeline. And this brilliantly illustrates his point because Knightley argues this NPC mindset doesn't just happen by accident. Take a look at this stark timeline. You spend your first 20 years studying, constantly being told to get a job. Then you spend 45 long years working for someone else. And finally, if you're lucky, you get 5 to 10 years of retirement at the very end. Knightley views this universally accepted life cycle as a massive imbalance, where your absolute prime years are essentially just harvested by corporations. He argues this pipeline builds directly into everyday workplace suppression. Think about it. Your tasks are assigned, your hours are assigned. It's that unfair exchange of time for fixed pay we talked about. But his sharpest critique is actually regarding what he calls false status. Society totally celebrates climbing the ladder, right? We all want to update our LinkedIn to proudly proclaim ourselves the executive assistant director of regional synergy or whatever it might be. But to Knightley, those titles are just badges of honor, distracting you from the real issue. You still don't own your time. Moving right along to section 3, the cost of survival mode. All this dependency takes a massive physical and psychological toll on the average worker. Knightley theorizes that the widespread exhaustion we see everywhere in modern society, it's not a coincidence, it is by design. The system is basically rigged to keep you tired. Between working crazy hours to pay for a big mortgage you don't even need, and then spending 3 to 4 hours a day just doom-scrolling short-form content on social media, your brain just gets totally frazzled. Because think about it, if you're always tired, you're never going to have the energy left at the end of the day to build a business or figure out an escape route for yourself. To illustrate exactly how deep this survival mode goes, he shares a specific comment he actually got from a viewer, which read, "It's a privilege to have a job." Now, Knightley points to this as the ultimate symptom of societal brainwashing. To him, bragging about a job or acting super grateful for giving away your irreplaceable time to a company that would frankly replace you in a heartbeat is a huge sign that you have completely lost your sense of independent value. He uses a highly controversial example to really hammer this point home, pointing back to the 2020 pandemic, which, interestingly, he refers to as Cucumber 19. From his perspective, that global shutdown forced society into a mass survival mode, which led to unquestioning conformity to the news and rules. He contrasts this with his own reaction, stating he straight up refused to follow the herd. Now, regardless of where you personally stand on the pandemic, he uses this as his absolute prime case study for how easily a dependent society can be controlled. All right, shifting gears to section 4, redefining hard work. So how do we actually fix this? Well, Knightley says you have to drastically redefine what hard work actually means in the modern era. He draws a really sharp contrast to the traditional sort of baby boomer ideal, the sweat, calluses, physical exhaustion required to feel like you've earned your keep. Knightley completely rejects that. In fact, he calls himself the smartest, laziest worker. He argues that true work ethic today isn't about physical suffering at all. It's about making big, calculated moves, outsourcing, being highly efficient, and shifting the progression needle for yourself. People in traditional 9-to-5s might call that lazy, but he sees it as simply having self-respect and setting boundaries. So the crucial point is how you actually protect this new mindset once you have it. He offers a very strict rule for this. Never take advice from someone that isn't doing or has done what you want to do. Because if you listen to people who have no drive, who don't think for themselves, or who are just scared to step outside the norm, he warns you'll end up a wage slave forever. You have to aggressively cut off negativity and protect your vision from easily influenced people. Which finally brings us to Section 5, the modern escape plan. If the 9-to-5 really is an illusion and survival mode is a trap, what are the actionable steps to break free? Knightley lays out a very specific pathway to independence here. Step 1, break those bad societal habits. Stop trying to keep up with the Joneses and just get your money in order. Step 2 involves self-education and actively surrounding yourself with a network of driven winners who live a life by design. And Step 3 is really where the magic happens, transitioning from a consumer to a creator. He says when you finally take your own knowledge, package it up, and sell it, you experience this massive light bulb moment. You realize you just generated income purely from your own creativity, proving once and for all you never actually needed a job. And to execute that third step, he points out that we have an unprecedented modern toolkit right at our fingertips today. He rapidly lists things like artificial intelligence, social media marketing, modern software and automation, and highly accessible mentorship. A lot of this is virtually free, by the way. He passionately argues that the landscape of opportunity has drastically changed since the 1980s and 90s, which completely eliminates any excuses for not building something for yourself today. Because of all these incredible tools, he flips the traditional concept of risk entirely on its head. Most people think starting a business is super risky, right? Well, Knightley asserts that relying on a single company for a monthly salary is actually 110% riskier than starting a lean, modern, online, one-person operation. With a digital business, you can scale fast, utilize freelance teams, and fall directly into profit without massive overhead. That ultimately gives you total ownership of your own security. He points to the number 70 to summarize the absurdity of the traditional path. He views the societal expectation of waiting to retire at 70 as a massive, massive scam. With billions of people on Earth, hundreds of countries, and countless beautiful places to see, he argues it's completely unnatural to defer your freedom until your golden years. Instead, his goal is for people to build passive income and automated systems to live a life of sustainability and true freedom by their mid-40s. We're going to conclude this explainer with the ultimate challenge Knightley poses to his audience. Will you live an assigned life or a designed life? It's a seriously provocative question that forces you to look at your current daily routine and ask if you are truly in control of your time, or if you're simply following that corporate pipeline. No matter where you stand on his more controversial views, his core message demands that we all take a much, much closer look at how we value our independence, our creativity, and ultimately, our time. Thanks so much for watching.